Hello, welcome back to I Woke Up Like This. I'm Dr. Claudia, and I am so happy you're here. Today, we're going to talk about manifesting from your soul's highest alignment. And it's been a bit of an adventure trying to get this episode recorded today, to be honest. And when there's this kind of resistance in place, i.e., somehow the audio recorded, but not the video. So I had to re-record everything. When that kind of resistance shows up, it's usually because there's a really important message that needs to get to you. So today we're going to talk about the manifestation path, and it breaks down into 3 very specific areas. You can ebb and flow and move between them. So we're going to talk about them pretty fluidly. The 3 steps are feeling the pull, visualization, and taking messy action. So let's get into feeling the pull. For me, it feels like a tug for my soul, feeling where I get pulled towards something and I don't have any analytical reason as to why. Sometimes it sounds like a fun idea, and other times it doesn't make any analytical sense at all, but it's something that just feels right, even if I can't see the path there. For those of you that have been following me for a bit, you know that I got a book deal with Hay House. And that very book is coming out next year, April of 2026 to be specific. And I manifested that using this very process. So let's get into it. When I think about feeling the pull of writing a book, it happened many, many years ago, long before I knew what I was going to write a book about, or who was going to publish it, or why I was going to do it at all, to be quite honest. And it goes all the way back to my English 102 class at Kent State University. Did I over excel in this class? No, I did not. It was one of the classes that I just needed to take in order to get any degree at all. So I showed up, read the books, wrote the papers, did the things. But the professor I had gave us an offer. If you turn in your paper, your final paper in person, I will give you a tarot reading. And at the time, this was long before we had tarot TikTok or anything like that. So I didn't even know what a tarot reading was, to be quite honest. It was definitely at a time where I knew I could hear things, but I wasn't telling anybody that that was happening. And while those things are still a bit fringe, they're nowhere near as fringe as they were back then. So of course that sparked my interest, and I went and I turned my paper in person. And my professor pulled out some cards, gave me a reading, and told me I was going to write a book. And it was going to be a wild adventure to get there. And he made sure to tell me this was not based on the work that I had turned into class, which he wasn't wrong. I think I got a B, which isn't horrible, but also not my best work. Because at the time I was still very much in the phase of trying to figure out who I was, what I was doing, why I was doing it, all of the things. So this was school 3 out of 9. Before I ever got a degree at all. So I asked him, I was like, okay, if I'm going to write a book, what am I going to write a book about? He's like, that's for you to figure out. That's part of the adventure. And what he didn't know is I was moving in a couple of weeks. I lived in Ohio at the time, and I was moving out to California because I knew that I needed to leave where I was to figure out who I was. And before I left, I went and I got an astrology book from the bookstore because we had the internet, but not the way we do today. And I mapped out my chart and all of the things that would come to fruition, not really fully understanding what I was doing, but made the best work of the book instructions that I possibly could. And it came back that I was supposed to write. Some piece of me at the time knew that that was true, but I had no idea how that was going to manifest. So I kind of tucked it away in a corner and went on and lived my life. And that pull circled back around again. Many years later, while I was watching Super Soul Sunday in my bed, drinking some tea. If you don't know what that is, it was a show that Oprah had where she brought like spiritual self-help people that weren't religious based. So think like Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer. And that was really my first exposure to content like that. It opened me up to conversations that I didn't know were being had. And I remember thinking, I'm going to write a book. Still, at that time, I had no idea what it was going to be. I just knew I was going to do it. But as it turned out, the version of me at the time didn't feel like she was worthy enough to write said book about said topic that she wasn't even speaking to people about at the time. That was a version of me that was really scared, a version of me that was really trying to fit in boxes. And my soul was screaming pretty consistently for me to stop doing that, but I wasn't listening. So it wasn't until I went through my healing process, fully awakened to who I am, my gifts, and all of those things, that it became clear what direction I was going to write a book on. And that's where we move into that second step, that visualization. I had a little piece of it when I saw that TV show, but I couldn't see it for myself. I couldn't see the who, the what, the why. That came in probably about 3 or 4 years ago when I started writing. And that's when we talk about the messy action part, because the only step that I could take in this process was starting to write. So I could see that I could write a book, but getting there required me to try. It required me to face all of the limiting beliefs that I had and the triggers in my nervous system that were keeping me from walking on that path. And what's funny is I wrote like 3 or 4 different versions of books. The first one, I got a couple pages in and decided that's not it. The second, I got a bit further and decided that wasn't it. The third, I got about 30 or 40,000 words. I don't remember exactly, and decided this was for me. This wasn't for everyone else, but it helped me heal to the place where I could see the book I was meant to write. And that's where that visualization piece really came in. I could see that it was possible. I didn't know exactly how I was going to get there. I didn't have a literary agent. I didn't have a publisher. I didn't have any of those things. But I knew what I needed to write about. I knew the direction I needed to go. And so I started moving. And a couple of months into consistently writing and getting about halfway done with the book was when Hay House approached me. I knew I could figure out the publishing part once the book was done. I knew I could figure out getting an editor once the book was done. But I needed to get it out of me in order for those other things to come forward. And I've done this with a lot of different things in my life, not just this. This is just the most recent example of a larger manifestation coming through. So when they approached me and said, "Hey, I saw your stuff on Instagram. I'd love to have a conversation with you," I said, "Perfect. I'm already halfway in. Let's have the conversation." And the synchronicity in that shows that that is the highest path for me to walk, because the place where I belonged showed up. The place that understood me showed up. The place that understands channeling, that understands my combination of spiritual and scientific self-help showed up. But they showed up because I matched the frequency of that manifestation. I took the action that was presented to me that I could take. And it was messy, and I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't fully know what I'm doing. I'm not all the way through the publishing process yet. So when people ask me, "Oh, what's next?" I go, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out when it crosses my path." You learn as you go. And the only reason that I have manifested the things into my life that I have is because I understand that that is just part of the process. That's a truth where we allow our analytical mind to step to the side and we actualize our actions based on the thing that's in front of us that we can actually take action on, while holding the vision of it getting completed. Because I visualized that I could do this. I knew that I could write a book that could help people change their lives. I knew it could come through me, just like the channeled messages come through me. That is part of me fulfilling my mission and purpose while I'm here. But I had to have the guts to walk towards it, not knowing how I'd get there. And there's a couple of really good, like popular examples of this process. And the two that I can think of are Jim Carrey and Matthew McConaughey. Jim Carrey has been very vocal about how he wrote himself a check for $1 million for acting services rendered before he had made any money as an actor. And he was able to cash that check for himself because he held the vision that it was possible. He felt the pull in his soul that that was possible for him. And even though it didn't make any logical sense, he walked towards it and he manifested it. The same with Matthew McConaughey. He's been vocal about how he had a list that he wrote when he was 18 years old, before he was acting. And on that list, he included a couple of things. He's also manifested those things. But one of them was winning the Best Male Oscar. And that's an award that's only given to one person every single year. And so 20 years later, that came into fruition. But his soul pulled at him to write that down, even though he wasn't even acting at the time. So from the outside looking in, that can look really irrational. because being rational has nothing to do with it. That is a construct of being human. That is not how your soul works. The analytical mind and rational thinking can be really, really beneficial, but it can also be really problematic in this process, depending on where you put your attention. And this is where I want to touch on the biology of manifestation and using your physicality and what it's built to do to actually help you in this process. So when we look at our eyes' capability of being able to see the spectrum of light, we understand scientifically that we are limited. We can only see a small bandwidth in the entirety of the frequency spectrum of light. And our brain is the same when it comes to understanding all of the available options to us through the web of conscious experience. There's this much and it can only see this much, but we have a biological system where we can hone our attention. It's called the reticular activating system. And what we put our attention on, that system will show us more of the things in that category. That's why when you're playing like I Spy and you're specifically looking for a certain color, you see more of that color. It's also the same reason that if you have a generalized positive outlook of life, you see more positive things. And if you have a more negative outlook, you see more negative things because your reticular activating system is honed to pay attention to those things. So you can use that system to help you manifest your highest available timelines, your highest available experience, the most abundance, the most joy, the most love, all of those things. But you have to continuously put your attention on them so the reticular activating system shows you the path of that particular energy. So you can't just think, oh, I'm going to think of this one thing, this one time in this one moment that's really positive, and then 99.9% of the rest of the time I'm going to think negative, and that's going to override that. It is the majority of what you focus on. So you need to get good at regulating your nervous system. You need to get good at bringing your attention back. And if you have a lot of stacked limiting beliefs in your system, you definitely are going to want to work on getting those out. There is a free meditation to help you do that in my bio, so go grab that. It's called the Mind Magic Limiting Beliefs Meditation. It is free, and I use it pretty consistently, and so do my members and my clients. It's very, very beneficial to help you get rid of those beliefs and put in ones that you actually want to operate from. So when it comes to the reticular activating system, this is why visualization is so important. This is why making a vision board can be super, super helpful, especially if you have a hard time seeing in your mind's eye. Get it out into your laptop, get it out onto paper if you want to do that. There's lots of different ways to make a vision board. But pro tip, keep it to yourself because you can't control anyone else's beliefs or limitations or what they think is possible for you, them, or otherwise. So allow yourself to manifest from your own energy. Share away once you've pulled it into your space, but keep it close until then. It's hard enough to overcome our own beliefs, our own triggers, and rewire our own nervous system without having somebody else's in the mix. It's not about being dishonest or hiding things. It's simply about keeping the things that are important to you close because they're your responsibility to take care of, not anyone else's. So use vision boards, visualizing in your manifestations, visualizing when you come up against some beliefs that you need to rewire, because when you do that, you shift that reticular activating system into paying attention to that path. It will show you the steps you need to take to get there, but it's a system that's not biased. It works with whatever you put attention to. So choose wisely. You can move through any of these three pieces and parts of manifestation at any time. You can feel the pull, visualize, and take messy action in a lot of different orders. There's no right way or wrong way. It's simply your way and your path. And on that note, it's important to discuss that a lot of times we walk towards something and we need to refine our manifestation. Because if you're digging yourself out of a hole, out of limiting beliefs, out of trauma, that you're healing yourself through, where you're learning to believe that you're actually enough for those things, a lot of times we really shortchange ourselves in the beginning of what we think is possible. There's nothing wrong with that because the things that you want to manifest in at least get you walking in the direction that you're meant to realize. Allow yourself to ebb and flow and refine as you go, because the more you remember who you are, the more you'll remember what you're manifesting, and you'll move from your frequency more than you move from external pressures. So you may start out moving from external pressures, and then you move more inward and more inward and more inward, which allows you to manifest from your soul's highest plan, which is the entire point. So I hope you're excited for April 2026, because that's when my book will be coming out. And happy manifesting. You're always doing it, but now I want you to do it with intention. If you made it this far on YouTube, put a celebration emoji in the comments, because you are going to get to where you're meant to be. And if you're listening on audio platforms, definitely give me a review. I would love to have more reviews on my podcast, and hit the download button, because that really helps me out. As always, I love you. You've got this. Keep going, and I will see you next week.